Hey there. Are you tired of waiting for the next episode of It's Probably Not Aliens? Well, we've got some good news for you. On Nebula, our streaming service, you can get access to all our episodes a week early. That's right, you'll never have to wait again to hear Scott and I debunk the latest ancient astronaut theory or get a movie fact wrong. But that's not all. Nebula is home to dozens of content creators we know you like, so you can find all your favorites in one place. Plus, we post content on there that you won't find anywhere else. And the best part? By signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/probablyNotAliens, you're directly supporting the show and both of us. So don't wait any longer. Join Nebula today and listen to the next episode right after this one. What do you know about Ecuador? That would be a good way to start.
What do I know about Ecuador? Well, I know when God closes an Ecuador, he opens an Equa window.
Uh-huh.
That's about the extent of what I know.
A pun.
That was my entire plan for this cold open, Tristan. I was just going to wait for you to toss it to me, and I was going to make that joke, and I was hoping it would lead to something.
Well, the only thing I can add about Ecuador, love Ecuador. I have a few things I can say about Ecuador.
Please. I have exactly that one thing that I said about Ecuador, so please pick up the slack.
So one of the little things that people don't know about me, and this will surprise literally nobody, is that I was involved with a bunch of like activist social justice-y things in undergrad.
What?
Yeah.
You?
But it resulted in a couple funny things and an interesting friends that I made because I was the first and at the time only male member of the gender equity club, like the feminist club on campus.
Okay.
Which I'm sure will surprise everybody.
Uh-huh.
And I was also the only heterosexual member of the Pride Alliance.
Nice. We love an ally.
And in Pride, I became friends with like an Ecuadorian woman named Vivi, who has just through like the sheer coincidences of like the universe. A few people have actually done this, but there's this weird collection of people who went to the same university that I went to in rural Quebec.
Okay.
Bishop's University, go Gators.
Yeah.
For like the 10 people who listen to this podcast who know about that. Well, Nicole and Mark listen to this podcast, so I know they'll at least go, woo.
Woo.
This is a university that literally like most Canadians will not have heard of. It is so small. But a handful of us have just all wound up in London, and we've like all found each other, and we all like kind of had some connection with each other. But Vivi like ended up moving here, and she recently got married, and we're kind of like doing a little bit of business together. And so one of the things that happened when we first like kind of did some co-working stuff together was she was just like, Tristan, have you ever heard of this Dungeons and Dragons thing? And I was like, have I? And then I like did the sort of like Captain America in that Spider-Man movie, like turning the chair around.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, several hours later, they played a like New Year's Eve D&D session that I ran.
Excellent.
That because they didn't give me any like notes to go off of for making this one shot, I did like research into like Ecuadorian New Year's traditions and like Ecuadorian cryptids and stuff like that. And they had a lot of fun with that.
That's great.
Yeah, and then now they want to go back. They want more now. I'm like, okay.
They want more. You've opened an Equa window into their love of D&D.
Yeah. I know some other stuff about Ecuador that is like less fun, like the fact that it is a country that the United States supremely fucked over by putting them into tons and tons of development loan debt. And in order to get that, they had to open up their economy because Ecuador has oil. So our American companies own a bunch of Ecuadorian oil assets. And
boy, the part where Tristan makes you sad is happening sooner and sooner in these episodes.
Yeah, it's like Christmas. It comes earlier and earlier every year.
Uh-huh.
But also the Galapagos Islands are part of Ecuador.
Oh, that's great. I like them. They got big tortoises.
Yeah, got the birds, lots of different birds.
Lots of birds.
It's got the vampire bird.
I don't know about that one.
One of the birds, one of Darwin's finches, is a finch that eats blood.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good on ya.
Today we're going to Ecuador.
We're going to Ecuador. What are we who are we? We know where we're going.
Oh yeah. This is a podcast.
Who are we?
This is a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens.
That is true. What do we do on this podcast? Well, I'll explain really briefly. We look at the show Ancient Aliens and Ancient Astronaut Theory and other just alien conspiracy theories, and we look at them while also taking into account the context of different cultures and history of real life people and places and things. And it's just a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun around here, debunking stuff and learning about cool actual stuff. And I say we learn. I'm a part of that we. I learn because I don't really come in here with much of anything. I'm Scott. My name is Scott. I know nothing. I come in here with exactly one pun about Ecuador that I will be using for the rest of the episode. And that's what I do.
My name is Tristan Johnson. I'm the one who is burdened with the weight of knowing too much. You know it's nothing. True. I know too much. Together,
we make a normal person.
Yeah, together we make a normal person.
We make one normal human.
Yeah. But yeah, today we're talking about, this is one I've been sitting on for, actually I haven't been sitting on it for that long.
Well, good. It's probably uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Stop sitting on it.
We're chewing our way through this episode on underground aliens. And so this episode of Ancient Aliens, it's a lot of stuff about underground caves and like, we talked about Darren Kuyu, but also even as far back as the underground in Dulce and such. So today we are doing something about caves. Everyone loves a good cave.
Everyone loves a good cave. I love a good cave.
Mm-hmm.
There's someone making a cave in their home right now. I guess it's really a mine. We've talked about this for like 3 episodes in a row. This woman who's building a mine. I have no idea what the status of that is, and I don't care to look it up.
Has she struck a vein of either natural gas or something and like suffocated or had carbon monoxide poisoning from the fact that
we'll never know.
Mines are dangerous.
If the updates suddenly have stopped, we've got questions.
I'm surprised at this point that she's gone for so long and like the police haven't been involved.
I'm just so interested. I don't know.
I'm no lover of the police, but it seems like a hazard.
Yeah. People are like, stop talking about the woman who's making a mine in her home. But how can I not talk about it? It's so weird.
It's weird. It's cool, but it's also weird and also probably dangerous. Not advisable.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it just because you want us to talk about you on this podcast.
Yeah, but yeah, this is actually also a ancient astronaut / like pseudo-archaeological gem. It's one that's pretty well known. And it's going to take us all sorts of places, including, in a small way, the moon.
Oh, dig far enough?
Yep.
Hit the moon. Hit the inside moon.
Well, we'll get to that. So there's a place in Ecuador called the Cave of Teos.
All right. I've never heard of this.
All right. Let me see if I can do my best. Like millions of people around the world believe that, according to legend, there's a cave called the Cave of Teos that holds hidden treasure and ancient knowledge.
Whoa, that's the coolest kind of cave.
Yeah, somewhere within the Cave of Teos lies a collection of metal plates.
Oh.
These plates are said to be a library, a metal library, which it's sometimes referred to, which contains the history of an advanced civilization that existed 250,000 years ago.
Whoa, that's old.
Yes, multiple times older than the entirety of settled civilization. So that is very interesting.
Old as balls. We've talked about that as the technical term.
Old as balls. And also apparently in this cave is evidence that extraterrestrial civilization were also there interacting with humans in this distant past.
This is cool. I love a good cave.
Yeah.
I love a good ancient cave filled with ancient treasures and knowledge and plates.
I should have made my Ecuadorian D&D adventure just be this.
This is a dungeon.
It is a dungeon.
Of sorts. Yes.
Yeah, so sometimes you hear this referred to as either the Cave of Teos or the Metal Library.
Both really good.
Mm-hmm. The Metal Library sounds really cool.
It does sound really cool.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm excited. This is something new to me. I know you said it was sort of pretty well known, but
it's well known if you are deep in crankery. Like it is it's not an Ancient Aliens mainstay. This is like kind of like a retro. I'll tell you this, and there's for conspicuous reasons why it's not talked about today. And I'll say like if you were like an ancient astronaut theorist head in like the 1970s,
all right,
then yeah, you'd be really, really into this.
Today, I'd be into it.
Not so much. And we'll get into why later on.
Oh, all right. I'm hooked. You've got me. Tell me about this.
So go through. Let's start with the legend overall. So it's believed, again, that there's this collection of metal plates somewhere in this cave system that are made of various metals, including gold, and are engraved with different symbols, geometric designs, and inscriptions, and describes this ancient 250,000-year-old civilization. Different crankery flavors have linked this to Atlantis. If you know you're more of a Gramcock, have linked it to the Hollow Earth theory, that this is like a pathway to the Hollow Earth. Or just another one that I found out recently, this concept that the world is full of an extensive tunnel network that just, like the Underdark is real, basically.
The Underdark is real. I like that. So
this was made by the Myconids or something like that.
So when I joked about the inside moon, I wasn't far off when you were talking about Hollow Earth theory.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which we have done an episode about. If you want to go check it out, it's a fun one.
It's a good one. Yeah. Yeah. So the origin of the story comes from a guy by the name of Juan Maurice. And by the way, I'm going to say Maurice is the closest I could get to. It's Hungarian. And I know like
Gotcha.
Hungarian speakers come at me because I always fuck up names and somebody who natively speaks the language will come at me. But here we go.
It is Moricz.
Yeah.
In case you want to know.
So Juan Maurice was the explorer who claims to have found this library in the 1960s.
You put explorer in quotes. I'm confused about that because, like, on one hand, I get that, like, you could call, like, a researcher. We put that in quotes a lot with these cranks, but I feel like anyone wandering around could claim themselves an explorer.
Okay,
is that
put a pin in that then. We'll get to it later.
All right.
But he is a Hungarian-Argentine person who claims he found the metal library. He was born in 1923, died in 1991, and he's known for two things: his connection to the Cave of Teos, but also having what I'll call controversial beliefs about history and the world.
Okay.
Specifically,
that's not new to us.
Yeah, specifically, and tell me if you've heard this one before, that groups like the Sumerians, the Hungarians specifically, and the Iberians were part of this ancient advanced civilization that he believed actually originally came from the Americas, and that indigenous South American languages were actually the connective tissue to these people. Specifically, he believed that because there's these so in Europe, there's a couple cultures that have linguistic roots that are very confusing to people because they're kind of outliers. The two big ones being the Basques, who live in a part of Spain that the Basque region of Spain has a language that doesn't really seem connected to any of the languages that exist today. And some people think it has like links to like ancient like European languages that are long dead. The other is Hungarian. And I think we talked about this like all the way back in like the first episode of this podcast about the Fermi paradox. Yeah. But there is like a theory that like Hungarian is like an alien language because Hungarian linguistically is very strange and tracing its lineage has been quite complex. So Juan Maurice apparently has come to the conclusion that these are actually the descendants of an ancient South American civilization that spread all around the world like hundreds of thousands of years ago and have died out.
Okay. Interesting.
Basically remnants of this ancient Magyar society, which the Magyar is like a kind of the people who settled in what would become Hungary.
Okay.
Now, he has no evidence for these claims.
Oh, no.
Surprisingly enough.
He had me going there for a second. I was like interested. I was like, okay, all right. Interesting. Yeah. But nope.
He has no evidence for these claims, but nonetheless, his work is the thing that contributed to this story of the legend around the Cave of Teos. His ideas also are linked to other fringe theories. A lot of his evidence comes from those of groups like the Fool Society, which again was this, which was basically like the sort of esoteric Nazism of like the ancient white people who kind of did it in reverse, where they thought that all of these advanced American civilizations were actually influenced or the descendants of ancient white people who brought it over. So he kind of did it in reverse. But
gosh, it's so weird how a lot of this stuff just keeps connecting to Nazis and Nazi adjacent ways of thinking. That's so strange.
Yep. The other thing is that people wouldn't have known much about Maurice's claims until a Swiss hotel bartender turned crank supreme. Eric von Daniken did a collab.
He hit him up in the DMs and said, "You want to make a video together? Want to make some content together?"
Yep, and so their work together wound up in a book called "The Gold of the Gods." Keeping on theme.
Von Daniken. It is so, I know intrinsically, like I know how big of an impact that Von Daniken has, but every time he comes up in these episodes, I'm like, I cannot believe this one guy screwed up so much of the world.
He's the Mr. Worldwide of pseudo-archaeology. He just like, really every time you see something, there's just like Eric Von Daniken's like, Mr. Worldwide showing up, and you're like, wait, he's in this too? Why is he all over the place?
Why are you here?
Yep. Pitbull, Eric Von Daniken crossover when?
Hopefully never.
So basically the thesis of the book Gold of the Gods was that there was this prehistoric earthly period called the Era of the Gods, where aliens regularly interacted with humanity before they left. And this is sort of when all this stuff happened. Von Daniken suggested that the caves are actually artificial tunnels, and that this library of metal tablets is evidence that extraterrestrials visited this period, and that there was this advanced civilization.
Okay.
Gold of the
claim there. there.
Yeah, Gold of the Gods was basically the first thing that really brought this to a global audience and sparked interest in these like sort of ancient tablets that were rumored to exist. And in the book, he writes about how he descended into a cave with Juan Maurice himself, with like Juan Maurice as a guide, that they went to the cave together and described seeing mounds of gold, strange statues, and the library with the metal books.
They saw it firsthand with their own eyes.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of vivid descriptions, and this fascinated the public and fueled an interest in looking for lost treasure and uncovering ancient secrets.
Did they take any photos? Did they take any of the gold? Did they take any of the artifacts?
Weirdly, no.
With them?
That is a strange aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, they just sort of left it there. It doesn't sound like them.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. So basically, though, this sparked so much imagination that other people aimed to investigate it. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But they, again, posited that these caves might have been artificially made because there's some like kind of like it's about 2 kilometers of tunnels, and some of them are actually rather straight. But that there's been connections that it's also, that other claims have put it that it was Atlantis. Some have also made connections to the legend of El Dorado, which is this sort of South American legend of a city of gold.
Yes.
Popularized by the Road to El Dorado, the
Road to El Dorado.
Is it a Disney movie or is it DreamWorks?
Couldn't tell ya. I said no matter what I pick, it'll be wrong.
Yeah, that's the answer.
So,
yeah. But this was very intriguing for all of explorers, including a man by the name of Stan Hall, who in 1976 led an expedition and tagged as his celebrity guest Niel Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong,
otherwise known as the first man who walked on the moon.
He's gonna be the first man on the inside moon.
Yeah, he heard about the inside moon and didn't want to be one-upped, so he was like, I gotta be the first man on the upside moon too, or the inside moon too.
Yep, that's me.
Yeah. But in this investigation, they failed to find any existence or any signs of an advanced civilization or this metal library.
What? You don't say.
But it's very funny. So apparently Stan Hall, the guy who pushed forward with it, was inspired by reading The Gold of the Gods and did this this 1976 expedition to what is locally called the Cueva de los Tallos, and it was a significant event. It got a lot of media attention because this was 1976, so Neil Armstrong had only been back from the moon for the last 7 years, so he was still like kind of riding high as first man on the moon.
Yeah, I mean, you could ride that high for the rest of your life.
I believe
I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah. Stan Hall led the expedition, but involved over 100 people, including members of the British and Ecuadorian military, expert cavers, scientists, engineers, and then one Neil Armstrong.
Yep.
Who served as the expedition's honorary president. Which is just like, how do you be the president of an expedition? I don't know. But the goal was to explore and map this cave system and search for the metal library.
All right.
And
simple, straightforward, treasure hunting. Let's go.
They did not find anything, but they did. But I want to say that this was not a complete loss because the expedition did successfully map the entire cave system.
Great.
They discovered like new zoological and botanical findings, like discovered new animals and plants.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
Made some genuine archaeological discoveries that dated to almost 10,000 years ago. So they found some pretty cool stuff.
But not 250,000 years ago.
So kind of like a part where Tristan makes you happy, though, is that this expedition did renew interest in the cave system as an archaeological site and a like ecological site.
Yeah, caves are cool.
To the point where now the Cueva de los Tallos is actually protected by the Ecuadorian government, and visitors have to have a licensed guide in order to protect the cave itself. Now, this legend of the metal library has really resonated with the local indigenous people, specifically the Shuar people, who now claim that the 1976 expedition looked in the wrong cave as their explanation. So that's why they failed to find the library.
Wrong cave.
Yeah.
There's a lot of caves. You just got it wrong this time.
Yeah, you just got the wrong one. So Stan Hall was a Scottish engineer and explorer who got a lot of renown because of this. Even after the expedition where they didn't find any of these golden plates, dedicated his life to exploring and conserving the caves. Sounds like a good guy. And left behind a significant legacy to inspire more exploration of this place. His daughter, Eileen Munoz, actually carried on this work, dedicating the last 15 years to the historical and ecological conservation of the cave.
Oh, great.
And and the Teos Caves, he also started something called the Teos Organization, which is dedicated to the historical and ecological conservation of the Teos Cave.
I like it.
Yeah, this organization focuses on kind of keeping the legend alive and studying the history of Ecuador's in the Americas, collaborates with other organizations, NGOs, scientists, researchers, and even artists to achieve these objectives. So they've the Teos Organization, they want to their goal is to focus on continuing research into this specific cave and looking into the treasure legend, but also at any pre-Columbian cultures of Ecuador and South America. They also focus on the ecological conservation of the cave because there are endangered species there and biodiverse ecosystems across Ecuador that they also want to kind of keep going.
Of course.
And yeah, they just want to kind of keep making sure that they've branched off into an entire Ecuadorian ecological preservation society.
Absolutely. This is nice. This is a part where Tristan makes me happy. I'm glad that they looked into these caves and they're like, well, we couldn't find the stuff you were talking about, but there is a lot of really cool life down here. There's a lot of interesting archaeological stuff down here, and people are working to preserve it. That's great.
It's like a metaphor for this podcast.
Yeah.
You go in looking for the mythical hidden library, and you end up finding a lot of cool science and history inside, right?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
But also, yeah, the Teos Organization also uses art, music, and film to connect people to the spirit of the cave, share its lessons, and guide audience to deepen their relationship with nature. So it's all about creating a sustainable future and having our relationship with the earth get better, that kind of stuff.
I love it.
It relies on donations for its work, and it encourages contributions to support its efforts. So if you want to go donate to the Teos Organization, I can't vouch for anything else they've done. I haven't been able to juice enough to find out if they secretly support something horrible, but all that seemed pretty chill.
Yeah, that seems pretty neat.
So let's look into this whole thing about the cave and the hidden library. So there has been
they've not found this library, but I'm interested in this library.
Yeah. So despite the fact that the cave has been entirely mapped at this point, and there's been extensive exploration, there's no evidence of any metal library or advanced civilization here.
Well, hold on. If I know anything about treasure hunting and hidden societies and secret libraries and treasures and stuff, sure, the cave system might be fully mapped out, so you say, but have they checked for any hidden walls and secret doors?
Yeah, have they pulled on all of the books on all of the shelves they found to make sure?
Yeah, they did. There was nothing that opened up a little compartment, a little secret little entrance there. There was no illusory wall in any capacity. Have they hit everything?
Did they hit everything with their sword? Because if you try to get past, there's one room that you have to turn off all the lights, or else you're just going to get blasted away by the statue. So you have to
That's exactly right. And then you won't pass the trials of Shar. Yeah.
The only real physical evidence, which comes from a priest by the name of Father Crespi, is who produced an artifact of the cave, found that this was made with modern materials.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So not 250,000 years.
No, made
ago.
Modern day. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And also the cave's formations have been shown to be extremely natural, which contradicts a bunch of the claims about it. Ecuador is very volcanic, so it is almost definitely an old lava tube or something like that.
Oh. See, it just keeps being more interesting to me.
Yeah. Speaking of volcanoes, did you see that Iceland is cracking in half right now because a volcano that has been dormant for 800 years is starting to come back to life, and it created a kilometer long fissure, and it's filling. It looks like fucking Mordor right now over in Iceland.
Oh my
God.
Wild.
They're gonna have to evacuate a town soon because a volcano is going to eat it. It's,
goodness.
Yeah, it's insane. Anyways, the local Shuar people have knowledge and use the cave a lot, but they're basically this myth that was brought up basically came from leaning into legends that they have about the cave and sort of twisting it and misinterpreting it in order to get this attention.
Yeah.
So that is that. So that also comes back to where does this actually come from? And it's that Morish, and then it turns out later that Morish admitted that he made everything up.
What? I did not see that coming.
Yeah. And then also, shortly around the same, and also that, and around the same time, Von Daniken had to admit that he had actually never been to these caves.
No way! Von Daniken, how could you lie? You just made something up? That's not like you.
Which is just like which is very funny because one, the fact that Von Daniken has admitted to making things up and the fact that this happened before, like it ended up in Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
So Ancient Aliens published something that even Von Daniken admitted he had not been involved with, and something that the person who claimed about it had also renounced and said that he made up. So
it didn't stop them.
Yeah.
Like at one point, Von Daniken said that this was true. Now, has he come out and said it was all a lie? Yes, but it doesn't matter because we trust our Lord and Daddy Von Daniken.
At some point, I guess. But yeah, that's why the part I said about quote unquote explorer.
I see. They didn't actually explore anything.
Yeah.
They just made it all up.
And yeah, but yet it inspired all of this stuff about this cave. So I want to tell you a little bit more about the cave, though.
I want to know about this cave. I think caves are. This is a cave that was so cool. The first man on the moon was like, I'm gonna chase a moon landing with cave exploring. This cave's got to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about it. But first, I need to introduce you to the wonderful world of product and service.
I'm let's dig down deep into that cavern. I don't know what I'm saying.
Oh man, gotta love product or service.
Big fan myself personally.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what we can do with all this money that we made from product and service?
What's that?
Is dig a hole into the ground and bury it, and then that's our treasure that people will find in thousands of years.
Well, that is certainly a thing you could do. I will point out that It's Probably Not Aliens currently makes a estimated $1.43 per hour that I put into the show. So
let's go.
It's not going to be a big treasure hoard. I will say that.
We're doing so good. Thank you to everyone who supports us on Nebula.
Yeah. But the Cave of Teos, otherwise known as the Cueva de los Tallos, which is just Spanish for the Cave of Teos.
Perfect.
You'll find it on the eastern slopes of the Andes Mountains in the Morona Santiago province of Ecuador, kind of near its border with Peru.
All right.
The cave's located...
How close is it to the Nazca lines? That's all I think about.
I think the Nazca lines are like in southern Peru, so it's actually like fairly far apart. Nazca lines are like in the deserty part. This is the jungly part.
Gotcha. How far is it away from Paddington Bear in Peru? He's from Peru.
Is he? Paddington Bear is British.
Yeah, it's a whole bit. Do I have to explain the backstory?
I don't know any Paddington lore. Okay.
Paddington Bear they're from Peru, and they were visited by a British explorer who left like tapes on how to be polite and whatnot in polite British society, and that's where they learned to talk and be polite and have British accents. But they're from Peru.
Oh wow, that's a lot more racist than I imagined. Okay.
Don't think about it. It's a cute bear.
Okay.
Anyway, he likes sandwiches with marmalade.
Oh yeah, it's weird. I did not know any. I've never been to the Wikia, the fan wiki for deep Paddington lore.
You just have to watch the movies. That's all you need to know. You don't need to watch them.
And the movies are good. I thought it was like a bunch of kids' books.
It's based. The movies are based on the kids' books, and the movies are great. The movies are wonderful. Like this, Paddington 2 had like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes for like years until one angry critic was like, I thought it was just okay.
I think I mostly think I never watched it, but like I mostly was aware of the 90s cartoon, but I did not know that. Okay.
All right. We can't get into this.
This is too much.
We're not Patrick Willems. All right. We can't get into Paddington lore.
Okay. So but the cave is in the Amazon rainforest, specifically in the Cordillera del Condor region, which has a huge amount of biodiversity. It's composed of limestone and characterized by intricate systems of tunnels, chambers, and underground rivers. Okay. So maybe it's not a lava tube. It's probably just a carved by water. So I don't think limestone's not really a volcanic rock. So that would make sense. The cave is, I said 2 kilometers, but it's actually 20 kilometers. And its deepest explored point reaches approximately 860 meters below the surface. So that's pretty damn big.
That's huge.
Some theories have indicated that its straight features could indicate it being a man-made structure, but there's no evidence of that. Ecologically, it's home to a vast array of wildlife, including the one that it's named after, which are called the oil birds, or Stetoornithidae, which are a sort of nocturnal bird that the locals call the teos, which basically is like, oil bird.
Gotcha. Do the birds live in the cave? Like bats?
Here's the thing here's a really cool example of convergent evolution. They're nocturnal birds that eat fruit, and they live in these caves, but some other places too. The birds have the thing that's unique about these birds is that they navigate in complete darkness using echolocation.
Oh my God.
They emit these high-pitched clicking sounds and listen for echoes to avoid obstacles, and which is very rare among birds. There's really only another one. Some species of swifts can do it, but it just shows like this is like a bird that basically evolved into the niche of a bat.
That is so cool.
Yeah, Ecuador is still teaching us about evolution.
Thank you.
It's also a very unique bird because it's one of those situations where it is its own genus. So it's a sole species in its genus, family, and order. So it has not many other species that are very similar to it. It's very weird in its own. Only a handful of species are like this, where there's no other species in its family, no species in its genus or order. So
that is so cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like a weird offshoot. It primarily eats fruits, but also it most often eats fruits of the palm oil tree or the tropical laurels, which makes it technically what's called a frugivore, which is an animal that only eats fruit.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, there are several animals that are called frugivores, and also it's a thing that some humans do, very much against doctors' orders. One of them being a person by the name of Steve Jobs, who I don't know if I can make any distinct medical claims, but it does seem like eating things that are only made up of sugar and then dying of pancreatic cancer might have some kind of link. I don't know.
Is that why he named his company Apple?
I think that was, maybe this is a myth, but I thought that was supposed to be an allusion to Alan Turing, but that could be wrong. That seems like a thing that people sounds cool, but it's wrong.
The original Apple logo was the Isaac Newton thing.
That makes more sense. I feel like it being an oblique shout out to Alan Turing would, that's one of those things that sounds cool, which means it's probably wrong.
Yeah.
Alan Turing being one of the fathers of computing who committed suicide by eating a apple that he laced with cyanide.
I liked the better idea that Steve Jobs just named it Apple because he was hungry and that was the only thing he could eat because he is a frugivore. He by himself he made himself a fruit.
Yeah, I think it was it was a later in life thing that Jobs got into with the fruit thing.
Oh, you think he was inspired then by his own company?
Yeah, he was just like, this company.
I eat, sleep, and breathe Apple. Literally. Yeah. That's all I do.
Oh boy. I wonder if I gotta find out what is Apple's Apple budget. How many dollars of apples does Apple buy in a single year?
That's an interesting question. Or is it? Anyway.
Anyways.
I'm like, how interesting is that? And then the answer is just like, it's a number, and I'm like, oh, all right.
Is it a big number? Who knows?
We don't know.
But the thing is that palm dates. So I guess like the reason it got its name oil bird is because they eat the fruit of palm oil trees, which is another whole. Palm oil is like a whole like resource ecosystem thing that I couldn't even get into today, but like palm oil is like it's key in making some chocolate and stuff like that, and it's like been linked with like all sorts of like worker and environmental destruction, and it's anytime you get into like a useful tropical plant, there's just so much like brutality and exploitation involved. But these teos birds, they just like to eat the fruit, so
that's nice. Little frugivores. I'm on the frugivore Wikipedia page now because this is interesting me.
Oil birds are known for having a loud and sometimes unsettling call, and because they're nocturnal, they happen at night, and oftentimes they tend to live in caves, so you can imagine like the echoing of a cave and like this like loud nighttime chirp that like sounds weird. Like you could imagine that being the source of many a scary story.
Oh yeah, for sure. Hey, did you know that some fish are frugivores? How does that work?
Eat fruit that falls in the water, I guess. Or maybe there some plants underwater that grow fruit, maybe? I don't know.
There must be. All right, anyway,
that's cool.
I gotta get off this page. I'm learning too much.
That's the point of the show.
Mm-hmm.
During the day, oil birds rest on cave ledges and venture at night to find food. Their presence in the Cave of Teos is so significant that it's become a defining feature of the cave, hence the fact that it's named after it.
It's named after him, yeah.
But there's also in this cave various species of bat, spider, insect, and amphibian. So it's definitely like a thriving ecosystem.
And the bats showed the birds how to do all the bat stuff.
You're like, hey, have you heard about clicking?
Yeah, have you heard about clicking? Have you heard about fruits? And have you heard about sleeping in a cave? It's great stuff.
Yeah, you can do it. They're just like what's it called? They're just like Like they're just such big fans of bats that they just like they got into it. I'm Batbird.
I like your guys' whole vibe. I'm gonna get in on that.
I'm gonna dedicate my entire species to this. Okay, but like it's like a big thing of biodiversity, and it's also in the Amazon rainforest, which is also known for having a huge amount of biodiversity. To the point where I think it makes total sense that many countries, like any country that hosts even part of the Amazon rainforest, should just get paid by the international community to just not develop in it. Like it should just get paid to just take care of this massive rainforest that is like
take care of it. Leave it alone. Let it do its thing.
Yeah, because leaving like this place of unmatched beauty and like one of the most important sources of biodiversity on Earth, and then having a bunch of countries that are struggling to get by without, like, if you want that to not just be torn down for resource extraction, they should just be paid. Just pay them.
100%.
Yeah. Culturally, the cave is also really important to the indigenous people of the region, specifically the Shuar and Achuar people, who see it as a sacred place with deep roots and legends that go around for generations. Before entering the cave, that you have to, if you want to go into the cave, you have to go through a Shuar ceremony. During the ceremony, you're given a Shuar name, and your faces are painted with red achiote fruit that symbolizes their connection that they have with the cave. The Shuar and Achuar people also have a deep relationship with the environment that's reflected in these myths and legends.
Yeah.
They actually attribute moral values to nature, and they have a whole cosmological system that explains their spiritual relationship with this sort of place. And that's why, like, the cave, like, this is like a lot of reason why, like when talking about like land back for indigenous people, it's like these cultures have a deep spiritual connection to this cave. And
to this specific cave.
Yeah. And like a lot of indigenous cultures that were like, pushed off their land and forced to go somewhere else have those kinds of relationships just severed. And that's why like indigenous people are so adamant about getting their like ancestral territory back, because they have these like connections to these like specific places.
Yeah. You can't just find another cave. It's not the same cave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the legends that they have surrounding the cave have to do with the existence of a race of large, peaceful Amazonians who were welcomed by the Shuar and Achuar people, believed to belong to the spirit world.
Neat.
Yeah, and people think that it might have been like, influenced by past interactions with other tribes and peoples that might have lived in that cave in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a lot of mystique and interesting questions about like, did people live in this cave at a certain point? Were there cave people at a certain point?
For sure.
Which is interesting to say that they're large, because most evidence we have of like people who spend a lot of time living underground, their culture ends up becoming rather short. Like the idea of like the dwarf from like fantasy and stuff like that has its roots in the fact that like if you go to like sort of like pre-modern like ancient mining towns, the people like after like several generations of people going down into the mine and doing that, they tend to get shorter and squatter, because like shorter people do better in the mines, right? So
they do better. The children yearn for the mines.
Yeah. And so people think that that's like where the legend of dwarves came from, is that like, people who spend a lot of like towns and like villages that spend a lot of time in mines tend to become shorter over time. Like as like,
how tall is the TikTok lady? I gotta know.
Oh no. Yeah. Well, I mean, because you gotta fit into little holes and stuff like that, right? Like before dynamite.
I mean, you could I like it. You could just make the mines bigger, but like, it's more efficient to make them smaller and just have smaller people.
Yeah. Especially if you don't have like dynamite or power tools or things like that to clear rock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So to kind of go on, like the Shuar and Achuar are indigenous groups that live in the rainforest, primarily in Ecuador and Peru. And they're known sometimes as the Jibaro, and are like the Shuar are known as the Jibaro and have like a lot of interesting hunting skills. The thing they're probably most known for is a tradition called Sansa, which is a form of head shrinking. So this is like the sort of shrunken head thing you've probably heard of, where like if they've defeated, I don't know exactly the cultural context surrounding it, but I think it has to do with people that they've defeated in battle, where they will basically take like sort of the skin of the head and like dry it out, and it'll like kind of like shrink around this thing, and like it turns into like this like little totem. They're quite, I've seen them in museums. They're quite interesting, and I imagine there's a whole bunch of like cultural context and ritual surrounding it that I haven't heard about, and I just heard heard, people being like, holy shit, have you seen these shrunken heads? Like that kind of thing. So
yeah, exactly.
Taking things out of context and just stigmatizing it. But if there's one thing that they're known for, like on the world stage, it's because of these things. I'm realizing now, I probably should have done more research to give that context. So to you, but go to your local library and look up this tradition of the shuar.
Go to your local metal library.
Yeah.
And they'll have Wisdom of the Ancients there.
Paper libraries are good too, if you want.
Yeah, those are good, and we need more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And
love libraries. I do like most of my reading through libraries.
Just so everyone knows, libraries do more than books. You can borrow tools and stuff from libraries.
Mm-hmm. There's computers. There's cool. I use LinkedIn Learning through it, and a lot of libraries have like free classes through that. I have one that's like all like language learning stuff. There's also like a lot of them have Libby now, which is sort of like a way to borrow like audiobooks and ebooks from the library and just read them on your device.
Free.
Yeah, libraries fucking rule, and it makes me sad that I think that like if you tried to propose the idea today, nobody would buy into it. Like the government would just lend people books for free. This is communism.
They'd let you borrow a lawnmower? No, you have to buy one from the store with your money that you earn.
Yeah, libraries are awesome. I'll just keep on from there.
Yep.
The shuar were in the past semi-nomadic, which is like a term for like people who would like live in an area for maybe about 10 years or so until they depleted the resources of that region and then move on to another. And they would live in like the rainforest with like sort of like loose kin and political ties towards each other. But now some of the shuar are starting to integrate into the local market, living closer to market centers or engaging in like, regular wage labor. While there are some who still practice like this ancient subsistence lifestyle of just like living kind of like on a hunting and gathering lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
But the shuar have a rich tradition of seeing this vision of the universe that shows up in their food, their myths, their dance, and their language, specifically with a high veneration for nature and the like duty to protect it.
Yeah.
The Achuar are people who live in the Pastaza River basin in Ecuador and Peru, and they also have like a cultural tradition that they've passed down. They're not so much nomadic. They are farmers. They've grown maize, beans, and vegetables in like small gardens, but also have a profound spiritual connection to the natural world, seeing it as alive and emphasizing that there's a strong interdependence between humans and nature. It's considered the place where the Achuar live. They consider themselves stewards, but they are stewards of one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth. And so they do things like perform rituals at waterfalls that they consider sacred and all sorts of stuff like that. Like, so they are not only like stewards of the environment, they are stewards of like one of the most important like ecosystems that exists.
Oh, the pressure.
Yeah. No pressure.
No pressure.
The cave has also been the subject of a lot of scientific expeditions, which means that it's become more scientifically important for understanding it because of all the biodiversity and nature that exists inside.
Mm-hmm.
So like that I think that's all really cool. And so like then I think about like the legends, like the sort of the metal library and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of went into like a little bit about like, why do people believe in these things? And I kind of
like where did this idea of the metal library came? Is it literally just they made it up for fun?
My guess is that it would be for like either notoriety or for money or something like that. But I think that people like these kinds of things, and like legends play a big role in all sorts of fiction and like are very pervasive cultural things. Like the idea that South America has this whole pervasive idea of the city of El Dorado, which still, or like things like the Fountain of Youth, which are all sort of still part of the mythos today. And I think it's just because like this is not so like controversial to say, but like humans have a sort of innate curiosity and a need to learn about the world. And I think it is that allure of like hidden treasure and esoteric knowledge is part of what makes these kinds of things have legs and always go forward. Also, I think our need to know and understand things shows the appeal of mysteries and why we like mysteries and unexplored things, unexplained things, and why the idea that the world being mostly explored feels like such a depressing thing.
Well, isn't that, I mean, and that just to tie back into something you were saying earlier, that's like part of why protecting the rainforest is like a big deal. Is I feel like there's probably still a lot of stuff there that we have, a lot of species there that we haven't found.
It's not even that. Like, I don't know if you saw this in the news lately, but I've been wanting to talk about it on something somewhere. But like, for the longest time, there's been growing, mounting evidence. So, okay, this is super cool. None of this, like, some of this stuff is not 100% verified, so some of it is speculative. But it's like smart people who know archaeology speculating it. So it's
Bigfoot is in the rainforest. Bigfoot's in the rain.
Even cooler than Bigfoot. So there has been, like one of the things that's going on in Brazil is that there's been this ongoing clearing of the Amazon rainforest, mostly to build new cattle ranches, right? And one of the things about the Amazon that has always stuck out as a little bit strange compared to other places on Earth is that it has the like natural plants have like an unnaturally high amount of plants that are useful to humans in them. And as we're getting a better idea of how indigenous technology worked, a lot of their stuff had to do with geoengineering. Like, for example, controlled burning of places to ensure that like plants that they wanted to grow that were useful to them would show up the next year. Or like, for example, in North America, we saw some indigenous nations who would burn down large parts of forest in order to expand prairie land in order to have more grazing land for buffalo that they could then follow and hunt. Like pre-Columbian Americas had a lot of civilizations that had a deep knowledge of like how to, like, instead of like, building cool gizmos and stuff like that, their idea of technology was a lot of this like manipulation and genetic, or not genetic. Well, there's a little bit of genetic if you think about selective breeding as that, but like, just like geoengineering and
manipulating the environment.
Yeah. And as we've been clearing the Amazon, we have been finding more and more evidence that there was probably like 2,000 years ago or so, a pretty large and sophisticated civilization where the Amazon has like grown over. And so there is like a growing suspicion that not only was there this like civilization that lived in the Amazon or today in like the Amazon rainforest, but that they probably actively like cultivated a good chunk of the biodiversity of the rainforest in order to produce things that would be useful to them, like food and various different materials they needed. So recently there was this large, I don't want to say anything incorrectly because I haven't like done like the deep research on it, but there was like this big like sort of radar survey or something like that where they did this, a bunch of archaeologists did this like sort of wider thing where they used like either like satellite or something like that to like penetrate the foliage to like look for signs of things. And like they're finding that this civilization was way bigger and way more sophisticated than they're finding like evidence of like roads and like walls and much larger building complexes than we ever imagined. And so like the Amazon is like full of unfound treasures that we may discover someday, which I think is wild.
Oh my God. That's so cool.
I know, it's unbelievably cool. And if you want to read more about it, there's a whole chapter on it in a book that I've been yelling at you to read for years, 1491 by Charles C. Mann.
1491. I have it. I bought it right at the start of us doing this.
It's
podcast.
An amazing book. So, but if you are somebody who who finds an interest in like the kinds of indigenous pre-Columbian ancient stuff that like Ancient Aliens kind of evades, 1491 would be like right up your alley. It's like my number one, anybody who takes interest in this kind of stuff, it's my number one recommendation. If you liked Guns, Germs, and Steel, I'm so sorry, that book is shit. 1491 is like, what if Guns, Germs, and Steel was good? Because it's
I was going to make a joke about Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Yeah, because Guns, Germs, and Steel's thesis is that geography resulted in the indigenous people being, backwards and technologically inferior to Europeans. When the answer is that they weren't technologically inferior to Europeans. They just had a completely different...
They did it different.
They did a completely different form of technological development that was sophisticated in ways that we are now, centuries later, trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other evidence too, like the fact that guns weren't as good as bows. They were just easier to train people on. And that like boots that Europeans had were shitty compared to moccasins. And like, I don't know. The idea that indigenous people were somehow technologically inferior to Europeans is actually just a lack of appreciation for what kind of technology they developed. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyway, we could talk about this forever.
Yeah. But yeah, myths are like a really big, myths are important for understanding part of I think that humans organize our memories through story. And that's why story is so key to the way that we remember and pass on things. So mystery and curiosity, I in many ways, even if they are fake, I think that stories are really cool for like showing that humans have like this innate curiosity and wonder that I think is one of our more charming features. So there is that.
Absolutely.
But there's a part where I have to make you sad, which is just that like this shows another example of the way that archaeology. Yeah. This shows another example of how archaeology has been like misinterpreted and sort of its image has been messed with in popular culture. Things like Indiana Jones or Ancient Aliens create this like misunderstanding.
Which features the real life Indiana Jones, by the way.
Who other people describe as the real Indiana Jones or the real life Indiana Jones. But like Indiana Jones, but also like, Tomb Raider or Uncharted.
Sure.
They paint this idea of archaeology as this romantic and adventurous thing, which then overshadows that, archaeology is science. It's methodical. It's slow. It's diligent. And it's not just like, whips and
just mass murdering.
And mass murdering.
Nathan Drake does. Yeah.
So that's the idea, is that archaeologists are either seen as bookworms or adventurers, and it's led to a lot of misconceptions. And now this has actually inspired people to go into archaeology, but it has also apparently created unrealistic expectations. So like a lot of times there are some times where people go into archaeology and then when they find out what it really is, they're like, oh,
I'm just going to be sifting dirt for a couple months.
Yeah. But the thing that the coolest ones are like, I get to sift dirt for 3 months.
Yeah. Those are the best people. When you meet people who love it, they're just like, we found a tiny half-centimeter shard of porcelain and that made my year.
Yeah. Because like you have no idea how important that is. And like the other thing too is that when archaeologists make like really big discoveries, that makes the press too, and that sort of contributes to the sort of misremembering. Like anytime like a new Egyptian tomb is uncovered or something like that like makes the news, and it's like that is like such a rare phenomenon. And honestly, sometimes I think it's a little bit overwhelming.
That's why it's news.
Yeah. You can imagine
that's
like
the whole thing is that it's news because it's rare. It does not happen all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could also imagine if I was an archaeologist and like these things are like slow and methodical, that like unearthing a whole new tomb is like, oh God, okay. Well, I guess I have the next 20 years cut out for me.
Yeah. Exactly.
So there have been actually calls to have a more accurate representation of archaeology in media to increase the sort of public understanding of this field, and that archaeologists are the brave people who often find themselves having to do the work that we're doing right now, debunking myths and hoaxes about ancient aliens or Atlantis or other bullshit.
Did you ever watch The Librarians?
No.
I think it was a show about archaeology, but with less killing people. It was still finding magical, mystical artifacts, which is still probably not real, but had Noah Weil in it, and he's great.
All right. Well, worth checking out. The other thing too, though, is that like this is also like this like misinterpretation of archaeology has led to like the side archaeologists, the non-professional like treasure hunter type people who have a habit of doing lots of damage to archaeological sites and illegal excavations. And we talked a lot about with several of them. Like there was that group that was trying to find the Ark of the Covenant by like messing around with like ancient Jewish temples and stuff like that. And it's like, oh fuck.
Right.
And also like this leads to tourism, which also has like a negative effect on a lot of these sites. And it's not great. Also, a lot of the times this sort of idea is again disrespecting of indigenous culture and heritage, because you're literally digging through their past. Some indigenous cultures do see like archaeological sites as spiritually inhabited. Like a lot of archaeological work today involves doing the really hard work of building the relationship with the indigenous people that you are then digging through their past. So you have to make sure that you are doing it on their terms and you are accepting the way that they revere these things, because like sometimes we don't appreciate like when we dig up like an ancient skeleton or something like that like that is the bones of their ancestors. And like in some ways, if you do not approach this with the utmost of respect and respect their wishes, you may be like literally desecrating their graves and stuff like that. So archaeologists today have to do a lot of this legwork that a lot of these explorer types don't do, of facilitating doing this the right way, because archaeology has a unfortunately long history of basically facilitating colonization and not respecting the cultures of which they are digging through the history of. Yeah. And it's sensationalism. But yeah, the idea, the other thing too is that we have to mention the fact that the Shuar and Achuar are facing issues like the fact that miners keep showing up in this region. They deal with missionaries who are trying to destroy their spiritual heritage and kind of force them to become Christian. There's the issue of settlers, i.e. like people who are not indigenous, Ecuadorians from the like mainstream Ecuadorian culture, like building and expanding into their lands, and just the growing of industry. Like I mentioned that Ecuador has oil. So oil exploration becomes an issue in their territory because people are trying to build oil rigs that then will destroy the environment and fuck with their natural things. The Shuar are working to try and conserve their culture by keeping up their traditional religion and their medicine, and the Achuar do try to collaborate to try and preserve this stuff, but they both have this rich connection. But yeah, they're dealing with a lot of pressures, but the fact that Ecuador and many South American countries have tons of untapped natural resources, and in our economy where we have to always be growing faster every year, it means that these countries are being pressured more and more to destroy the beautiful, fragile, unique thing that they do have in order to make number go up. Because to them, making number go up means jobs, means rent, it means cities, it means internet, it means...
See, this is why I like your idea of just humanity as in general, just paying these countries to just keep these places thriving. And
the Amazon is like, it's not even there is no other place on Earth that has that level of biodiversity, and humanity as a whole has a duty to keep it functioning and to keep it alive. And and these people are the stewards of that land, and we should be paying like people like the Achuar and the Shuar to keep protecting this completely like priceless part of the earth.
I mean, have you heard about the birds that are bats?
Yeah.
That's cool.
They should start breeding those with the birds that drink blood.
This is good. We're in trouble now. This is too good of an idea. Vampire birds?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think they're actually called vampire finches.
Oh, that's great.
Let me see. I'm going to look that up. Yes, they're called the vampire ground finch.
Well, they're going to be a vampire cave finch soon enough.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. But yeah, that is that's the library of Teo, or the Teos and the Metal Library.
Quote unquote library.
Yeah,
that doesn't exist.
But if you find a library that does exist, support it with your patronage.
Support it. Get stuff. I mean, it supports you. That's the fun part of a library.
It's free.
It supports you.
As Arthur would say, having fun isn't hard if you have a library card.
That's right.
Good
job, Arthur.
And if you do support the library, please take a picture of you supporting the library and send it to @ProbsNotAliens on Twitter.
And Blue Sky. That's where you can find us. Do we have a Blue Sky code for people?
Yeah. We have BSKY-social-VFR7A-AE4KN. It's all lowercase. First come, first serve.
First come, first serve. And we've been doing one for the Nebula releases and one for the regular non-Nebula releases. So all of you non-Nebula people who maybe haven't had a chance to get those codes, now you can. Why? Why would you get those scoped away from you from the Nebula people? It's because Nebula, you can listen to episodes early if you support us over there. Nebula.tv/probablynotaliens. It's great stuff. Tristan, what do you do on the internet besides this? Anything?
Sometimes I run a YouTube channel called Step Back where I talk about basically I just talk about history and why it's important for understanding things that happen today. At the moment, my latest video that should be out by if it's not out by the time this happens, then I'm in big trouble. But it would be about Gaza and the history of Israel and Palestine and all of the history that you need to know to make it make some kind of sense.
Excellent.
And Scott, if I wanted to know why Groot saying "I am Groot" is so important, the mind-blowing meaning behind
mind-blowing. Is that what I said in my title?
In all caps.
Mind-blowing, all cap. The mind-blowing reason.
Groot says I am Groot. Where would I need to go to find that video?
You go to nerdsync.com. Don't go there. I don't own that website. It's youtube.com/nerdsync productions, actually. Just look up Nerdsync. I don't own any of the good URLs that actually link to my channel. I don't own youtube.com/nerdsync. Someone else does. But anyway, Nerdsync, Nerdsync. I talk about comics and superheroes and cartoons, and I haven't made a video essay in a while, but I need to get back on it. So look forward to that. I've been teasing this thing about.
Be like, this is why Groot saying I am Groot is still important.
This is why, yeah, I'll just do sequels to all my the mind-blowing reason why Groot is still relevant in 2024, even though Guardians ended. Thank you to everyone who writes reviews of this show that you're listening to on Apple Podcasts and leaves feedback on Spotify. Every time I mention that I get emails, I'll say that again. Every time I mention that I get emails from people who leave feedback on Spotify, it always gives a spike to the amount of people who keep doing it. So thank you so much to everyone who does that, because I get emails every time you leave some feedback and things like that. It's great. And you can tell your friends about the show. Mm-hmm. I would love it if you did that.
Yeah.
It's 2024. Say, hey, you need a new podcast? This is a great one.
Yeah, not enough podcasts in the world.
Not enough white guys doing podcasts.
It's true.
We got that covered. And a great place to send your friends is a very simple website, probsnotaliens.com. It's got links to everything over there, where you can listen to on every single platform that we're on. Links right there, making it easy for you. But that's it. So until next time, my name is Scott Nicewander.
I'm Tristan Johnson, and the truth is out there. Probably. I don't even know what I went with. I got two probably, and I was like, I don't even know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Because it was about a cave, but we've already done one where you did an echo.
Yeah.
You were like, probably. We're running out of ideas. Hey, if you're still listening at this point, send us your best ideas for how we should end the show. How we should say the word probably.
How should this show end?
We're running out of ways to say this one word.
Maybe we end it like this.